This project will be presented by attorney Syeda Rizwana Hassan. She's a dynamic environmental lawyer who runs the BELA, or the Bangladesh Environment Lawyers Association, as chief executive of that organization. She is well awarded. She had won the National Environmental Award in 2009, the Global 500 Roll of Honors in 2006, the Goldman Award in 2009, and was one of the heroes of the environment proclaimed by the Time magazine in 2010. So let's welcome Attorney Rizwana Hassan.
Let me first of all apologize because I do not have very nice pictures to show you. My pictures are rather gloomy, though colorful. I'm a lawyer, so with this effort of project, what I did was I identified 18 environmental issues that are very persistent environmental pollution issues in Bangladesh, which are long-standing, not being solved, not being adequately attended by the policymakers. And I was wondering as to why they are not doing anything about all these 18 problems. And in my pursuit to kind of bring an end to this havoc of pollution and destruction of natural capital in the name of development, I relied on Rio Principle number 10, which talks about people's access to information, people's access to justice, and people's right to participate in environmental decision making. My organization wanted to find out the status of performance of the government to Bangladesh in fulfilling Principle 10 of the Rio Declaration. So I'll just be sharing the most talked about 3 cases. Will not be sharing with you all the 18. This is This is how the rivers in Bangladesh look. Bangladesh is known as a country of rivers. We call it a riverine country. Rivers are our mothers. And this is a picture of the main river that flows through the capital of Bangladesh. It remains the only river that flows through Dhaka, which hosts a population of 1,640 lakh, which is like 14 million. And it's one of the most densely populated cities of the world. Here people are dependent at the moment on groundwater for their drinking water supply. The reason is this is what we have done to our rivers by trying to promote industrialization that is export oriented. So the decisions around industrialization actually takes place on how much money a particular industry earns and what is reflected in the Bangladesh Bureau of Statistics report. What is never considered is the havoc that such bias towards industrialization is causing to the natural resources and of course to the millions of people who still depend on these rivers for their drinking water supply. As they don't have access to piped water, they use this water for bathing purposes, and the fishermen, 60% of the people of Bangladesh get their only animal protein from these open water open water bodies which are being polluted like this. This is the second industry, which is actually, I don't call it an industry, it's shipbreaking industry, which basically means that the obsolete ships, out of the life ships of the Western worlds, are sent to countries like Bangladesh. At the moment, there are 4 countries that are allowing this industry to operate on a commercial basis. One is Bangladesh, second one is Gujarat in India. I don't say whole of India, because whole of India, I don't think it would be possible for this industry to run in Mumbai or in other parts where they go for enforcement of environmental law. The third country remains Pakistan. So you see Bangladesh, India, Pakistan, and the 4th country is China. And we know about the human rights report of these countries. We know about the environmental compliance of these countries. So all these obsolete ships of the Western countries end up on our beaches, and this one ship can have as much as, no, this is in fact a report of the World Bank which shows that by 2020, Bangladesh will have to deal with 79,000 tons of asbestos. Bangladesh does not have the ability to deal with 1 ton of asbestos, not to talk about 79 tons of asbestos. And this is the pollution flow, which is a very conservative statement, but that again is very horrifying. This is what is happening when ships end up on the beaches of Bangladesh. Poor people, in the name of employment, are forced to work there, and it actually takes place in the southern part of Bangladesh, the coastal area, but the people who work there move from the northern part, which means they have no other mode of earning a living, and they are told that if you go there in the shipbreaking year, you will have a very bright future, you don't have to worry about your living, blah, blah, blah. But this is, here you see a woman dealing with asbestos. Just like that, no protection at all, with bare hands, and what she's doing is inhaling. And at the moment, there are many donors who are trying to actually offer very cosmetic solution to this problem by providing workers with masks and other things. But it's not about providing workers with the protection devices. It's more about sending your toxic waste to a country that doesn't have the ability to deal with it. So you are basically exploiting a poor country in the name of income and industrialization. Here you see this has got nothing to do with international trade. And the other instance that I shared of shipbreaking, it is continuing in total violation of the Basel Convention of the United Nations, because the Basel Convention bans export of waste from one country to the other without the consent of the receiving country. And all these ships, although they come from Europe, they are actually first sold to a middle people who are known as the cash buyers. So a European ship or a Japanese ship will be first sold to a cash buyer. He will then change the flag of that ship and then bring it to the coasts of Bangladesh. This is a purely domestic problem, but it has links to international market. Here you see the whole of southern part of Bangladesh. This is how a village looks. It's always under brown water because we are having shrimp culture there. You hardly would find any trees, but that is not how my country looks. The government decided that the coastal part of Bangladesh should be converted into shrimp zones. I know that Philippines has the same problem. So 17% of the total cultivable land of the country went under shrimp cultivation without any consent from the people. So your land has been declared a shrimp zone, but without involving you in the decision-making process. So this is how the coastal side looks. This is yet another thing that we did under this project. We were the first ones to apply under Right to Information Act in Bangladesh, which was enacted in 2010. So we applied under the act and got information that this is a building that is owned by the largest export sector of Bangladesh, the ready-made garments. They have built this thing on wetland and without any permission of the town development authorities, and they enjoy culture of impunity because they are business people, they're exporting, they're bringing in money for you, so why should you be holding them responsible for what they do? So then we gave it a fight. All the 4 issues were taken to the High Court of Bangladesh, and we won all the 4 cases. It wasn't tough, I swear. We all had it. It was a nightmare, but we managed to win because the violation is so open, it's so blatant that nobody can actually deny what we are arguing about. So the court directed that all industries who are polluting the rivers must have effluent treatment plants, and some industries like the tannery have to be relocated. The court said no shrimp farming in agricultural land, forests and public water bodies. No shipbreaking on beaches, and there has to be strict rule on shipbreaking, and Basel Convention has to be followed so that unless and until a ship is cleaned outside the territory of Bangladesh, it cannot enter. But what they are now doing is they are producing fake certificates. That is not a problem. Then the building that I showed has to be demolished. Public participation, the last 2 are actually not court decisions. They are rather result of our legal advocacy. The government decided that in the EIA process, in finalizing the EIA process, public participation has to be ensured, and that if you complain to the Department of Environment about an environmental grievance, to redress your grievance, public hearings can be arranged. Now the reality remains. Government is desperate to save the industries. And the government, in trying to do that, is not doing any impartial cost-benefit analysis. The EIS are still very evasive. There is no public disclosure of any major projects. Number of shipbreaking years on an increase. No binding rules as yet. 3 years have passed. We have been constantly pursuing, but no binding rules have yet been framed by the government. Relocation yet to be arranged. They have actually specified a site, but the tannery owners are refusing to move. Now, the next slide is about the difference that we were able to make with this project money. First is that we managed to win the cases. It is taking longer, unfortunate, but one day we will definitely be there because the law is on our side, and human rights violation and environmental violation cannot just continue for an indefinite period. There has to be a halt. How soon can we bring it is the issue. This is where people got organized. We mobilized them. They resisted shrimp cultivation and brought and established their control over their land and brought back the greenery. Now, in terms of challenges, I could just show you this slide. I mean, this is nothing interesting. That when we were fighting against the industry, this is what we were told by the government, that we are anti-state. We are not protecting the interest of the state. So here is the minister who said this because he compared me with a bad genie. And you know where the genies remain. So here is the toxic ship. This is the person who said that. And that is where the court is trying to defend the causes that we are trying to defend. So, when we talk about the challenges, this remains the major challenge, that political will does not very easily side with us. Even when the violation is very clear, even when people are dying in the shipbreaking years, even where people are resisting, police is opening fire, it is very difficult to bring political will in your favor because the money power is really, really, really very powerful. Thank you very much.
Not a very flattering picture of Rizwana. Okay, our next presenter is Dr. Kwa Harn Wei, who is from the Department of Building of the National University of Singapore. His research interest is in integrated science-based sustainability policy for resource management, including promoting sustainable corporate practices. He took charge of an UpFed Showcase project back between 2006 and 2009 on corporate social development responsibility. And so we'd like to welcome Dr. Kwa.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for your invitation. It's my pleasure and an honor to be here. So this is a project that we have done under the UpFed Showcase program, which is on CSDR, which stands for Corporate Sustainable Developmental Responsibility.